John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. Later in the program, a strategist for the Democrat Party in Arizona. We're going to talk about where the party is going in the wake of Trump. But first, he appeared on The Bachelor, but his fame and notoriety invited a terrible, dark downside into his life that no one could have imagined. Following the show, Clayton Echard was in a brief relationship with a woman who later claimed she was pregnant with his two twins, claiming that Echard was the father. But so far, the evidence shows that she made the whole story up, and she's been criminally charged with fraud, making false statements, destroying evidence. Clayton Echard joins me now on Newsmaker. Clayton, thank you. This is not the typical show we do on Newsmaker, but your story is so provocative. I really kind of wanted to dive into it because I think this would be probably 95% of the world's nightmare for men. I mean, this is really an unbelievable story. Thank you again for doing this. Let's start with how your relationship with Laura Owens began. And we'll show some video. We've got a couple of pictures of her.
Yeah, so she had originally reached out claiming that she wanted to purchase a home. So she reached out on LinkedIn.
You're a realtor.
Yes, I'm a realtor. And so we exchanged phone numbers. And then from that point, she started flirting. And, I wanted to keep it professional. But then, one night we decided to meet up. And that night led to a night of intimacy. And that was where it all began. It was intimacy, but not intercourse. Is that correct? Yes, and which again, probably I don't know if I can explain exactly what my fear was on here, but it's online for people to read about. I felt that she potentially trapped me, is the terminology. I thought she tried to basically become pregnant with my fluids. Yes. Okay. Would that have even been remotely possible? Did it enter your mind that that might have been a possibility? It was a small possibility. I was fearful that she might have been successful at doing so. And that's why, just even with a 0.1% chance of it being real, I couldn't obviously get that doubt out of my head. Okay. So you meet her, you have basically a one-night stand. Where does the relationship go after that? So she said she wanted to date me, in which I told her, hey, that was a one-time thing. I don't want to date you. She then began to get very emotional, and then started to tell me, hey, I can't work with you unless you do date me. I told her to go find a different realtor, that I was like, hey, let's just cut things off and you can work with somebody else. And then she kept harassing me, sending me messages, and I finally said, I blocked her and said, look, you're no means no. Please stop contacting me. And then I got a few days later a pregnancy test, and she said that she was pregnant. Okay, this is her. This is off her website. She's done TED Talks or some kind of TED Talk. We'll show that one next. But this is Laura Michelle Owens, who's now been charged with fraud for making this story up. So all of a sudden you're thinking this is a TED, and it's actually a talk that she did on cyberbullying, surprisingly. And it's a talk that she did as well on the first victim. So she's done this now to 4 men at the very least that we know of. And this TED Talk was a complete lie fabricated around the first victim. Okay, so she has, I don't want to say made a career, because she's had other parts of her life that we don't really know much about. But she has done this before. And when you were in court, and we'll show some of the court video, you can maybe explain it if you see the video. I think this is her in this video, video 1. Is that her standing in the foreground? That's her behind the computer. Oh, that's her behind the computer. Yeah, okay. That's one of my lawyers that's standing in the foreground. She's being deposed, or she's in court? Yes, yeah, we went into court, and that's my family in the back there. That was a major win, and a couple of the victims are sitting back there behind my family. That was a big day for us last June, I believe, where we were able to prove with a court order or judgment that she was never pregnant, and then she was referred that day to the county attorney for prosecution. So that was a major day in court. Yeah, she went pretty far. I mean, she posted a Dropbox photo to Reddit, apparently, of the twins on a sonogram. Someone who saw it, though, traced it back to a YouTube video going back 7 years ago. Yes, correct. Yeah, that was a big downfall of hers, was she was trying to use this information to persuade people online, and Reddit took that video and was able to trace it back to a YouTube video from 7 years ago. They sent that to me, and then I was able to forward that to my lawyer, and we used that against her.
Clayton, you've heard the quote, lie travels halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on.
Yes, not only have I heard it, but I experienced it.
But that was exactly my point. I mean, how do you defend something when you're accused of this? And I know, you guys kind of had, when it got contentious, you guys had back and forth. I don't want to say restraining orders. I don't think it was restraining order, but it was an order of protection.
Yeah, I got an injunction against harassment. She got an order of protection. The difference being just like the familiarity. You get injunctions against strangers. You get orders of protection.
Yeah.
Protection, So I just got the injunction because I was like, I don't even know this woman. But we both got them against each other. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, in order to prove innocence, that I had to state the facts and show people. And when she first came out, the facts that I needed to prove was I needed her to do a paternity test or prove pregnancy. And both of those things she used against me and said, well, we have to wait 9 weeks for an ultrasound, and then we have to wait another 2 weeks for a paternity test. So those first 9 weeks, I was guilty until proven innocent.
So you get stopped in a TSA line because you've got a court deal, and you're getting glances and looks from people behind you. This had to be incredibly uncomfortable. This is what I mean by the truth travels halfway around the world before, or the lie travels halfway around the world before truth gets its boots on. You kind of become the unwitting victim here.
Yeah, I was so angry. I called my lawyer. I was coming back from a trip from overseas, and I got stopped by customs, and they said, you're aware that you have a restraining order against you. And I had, I never forget, a woman behind me in line that just gave me this glare, assuming that I possibly, physically abused somebody.
Yes, right. Very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable, and I'm not abusive, and so I was so embarrassed. But he was doing his job, and that really, though, that was what I carried, was I guilty till proven innocent, and now it's been ever since I've tried to clear my name. Clayton,
she'll be arraigned in May, as I understand it, but tell me kind of the genesis of this. So when this all starts, do you believe when you started to catch on that this woman is not altogether, and that the motives may be really suspect here? Do you believe it was for money to extort you, or for some type of glomming onto your fame or notoriety? What do you think was the motive?
Oh, I believe the motive, through talking with others, she lacks self-love, and so when men don't want to date her, her goal is to destroy them, to make them feel as poorly as she does with their own self-images. So that's her whole goal, is just to destroy men, and basically, however she can, send letters to their workplace, get the police to show up, keep reinstating the orders of protection.
Wow, this sounds like a full-time job.
And that's what she made it. And unfortunately, her family's complicit. So I believe her family funded her behavior, as in letting her sit in her guest house, her parents' guest house, and do this full time. Her mom's very complicit, and unfortunately, that made it much more challenging.
She lives here locally?
Yes.
She's out on some type of bond, obviously, because it's not a violent crime, but it's so she's out there. Do you worry about your own safety?
Well, if anything happens to me, everyone knows who to go to, and so not really. Of course, there's like, what if they get violent? It's like, well, your life's over at that point then for them, because if anything happens, people know who would be, responsible for that. So I'm not too concerned. I am concerned for other, though, people. She's on dating apps, still. So
how old is she, Clayton?
I think she's 34.
Okay. So the sonogram, the fake sonogram, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, as you put it.
Yeah, when that was able to be traced as to there was no origin history or points, it was just basically fabricated. That's strong evidence that everyone goes, okay, she's making this up. And then once we got to subpoena her medical records, and they all came back as having no record of her, That was it, right? Like that's I mean, is as good of evidence as you can get to say, hey, this person claims she was seeing these providers, but they have no record of her.
Is she still claiming that she actually was pregnant with your twins?
Yes, I heard at this point, I guess she's just going to basically go all the way till the end, claiming that she has been telling the truth, but nobody believes her. So I don't really understand the point right now. And now she's attacking the county attorney, stating she's biased. So I guess she's going to take this to trial and fight the charges all the way to the end.
Wow. How has this affected your life?
It's actually made me more resilient than ever. In a weird way, I'm kind of okay with having gone through it because it's my reality. There's no do-overs. So I found the silver lining in it, and there's nothing I can't take on, I feel like, in this world from here forward. It's also showed me the amount of love and support I have in my life. So really great things have come from it, and I'm okay. I'm out still living my life day to day.
What advice would you give guys who run into something like this?
To lean on your supports. If you find yourself in a torturous situation like this, lean into the people that love you, care about you. They're going to be the ones that are going to help you get through a troubling time like this. If I didn't have my support, I would be in a much worse position.
Okay, the final question here, and thank you for your time, because I know it's not a pleasant thing to talk about. You were on The Bachelorette, so you were on that show first, and then they see you and they're like, this guy would make a good bachelor. And that's kind of how that all goes down, right?
Yeah.
If you had it to do over again, Clayton, would you go down the road of reality TV, or do you think it invited a lot of nonsense into your life?
I would absolutely do everything all over again, because who I am today is the most authentic version of myself. I've never had a self-love and self-confidence like I do. That all came from the adversity. I had to find the silver linings within all of the negative, and I have at this point. So I couldn't be better. Even though I faced a lot of craziness, it's made me who I am today, and that I'm proud of.
You got to go to court a lot, though, unfortunately.
You know what? I guess it keeps things interesting, right? One thing's for certain: at the end of my life, I won't have to worry about saying that I lived a boring life.
Well, there may be a book in your future too, Clayton Echard.
Oh, yeah, there's probably a few things coming, so we'll just keep taking it.
Okay, so you're still dabbling in that world, yes?
I have some stuff up my sleeve that people are going to see here very shortly. So
well, let us know and keep us in the loop, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Clayton Echard, thanks. Best of luck. Next on Newsmaker, I'm going to be joined by a Democratic strategist, Tony Cani, about the state of the Democratic Party following the second coming of Donald Trump. Back on Newsmaker in a minute. Welcome back on Newsmaker. Ever since Donald Trump's election victory in November, Democrats have been trying to find their footing. How did Trump gain strong support from working class voters, once a cornerstone of the Democrat Party? And why did minority voters move to Trump in greater numbers? And how do Democrats get their mojo back? Tony Cani is a partner for Radar Strategies and a Democratic strategist, and maybe Tony can provide some answers. Tony, great to see you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Tony, just a quick question. Has there been a meaningful postmortem by the Democrat Party after the election? I keep hearing there has not been. Are you hearing anything different?
Well, I mean, I think there have been many organizations and pieces that have put together and have come up with what they think went wrong in the election. So I think there have been several postmortems. I think what's happening, though, is that there's a lot of people who disagree about exactly what it was that went wrong. And so there's not like a consensus postmortem. And you're seeing some of those different strategies play out in the ways that people that maybe running for president in a couple of years, the way that they're sort of behaving and interacting with folks. And so I think big picture, though, there is a consensus that the Democratic Party did not do a good enough job talking about its successes, reaching out to the voters that you described at the top of this segment, and really focusing on, some of these like kitchen table issues that have been the primary focus of the Democratic coalition for years, and got sort of, pulled into different fights that maybe they didn't necessarily, weren't as important to voters. And so I think big picture, there is going to be a robust debate, and it might end up being that the biggest post-mortem that takes place is the emerging presidential primary.
Wow.
Which I think
that's 3 years off, though.
Well, I think that the candidates are going to start campaigning much earlier than that, and so, yeah. And so I think that the big picture is when it comes to, and I'm talking about the national party, when it comes to sort of the local statewide, I think that they have a pretty clear perspective about the things they need to do to win re-election or to take office.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, I am very suspicious of declarations that a party is dead. We heard this about the Republican Party, and there was a big divide between Tea Party and the mainstream Republican brand. And then Trump comes along, he upends the entire paradigm. So this idea that you're going to write the Democrats off and say they're in the wilderness and the party's going to end up on the ash heap of history, I think is very premature. But
I remember there were a group of Republicans that thought after Obama won in 2012,
it was over.
That it was over.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, it is a thing, that is, and we're seeing the numbers for the Democratic Party. They've been low in a lot of part because many Democrats have been frustrated. They haven't been fighting back hard enough against what's happening. And so the fundamentals are shifting a little bit right now when it comes to, the presidential numbers are going down for President Trump. And there is an opportunity for Democrats to swoop in here. And the key is we need to make an affirmative case for why Democrats should be in power, in addition to talking about the challenges that President Trump brings to us.
Let me read you a quote from Ruben Gallego, Arizona senator, newly minted. He said, "My perspective is what happened in the last election is that we got so pure and we kept so pure that we started kicking you out of the tent. It ends up there aren't enough people in the tent to win elections." Do you think there's some truth to that?
I think it's a very Arizona perspective. We know as Democrats in Arizona that in order to win, you can't have a debate about whether or not you're going to increase the base, the number of Democrats, or you're going to be persuading people that are in the middle or disaffect the Republicans. The only way that Democrats win is when we do both. We have to do both of those. And so I agree with Senator Gallego. The real challenge is being able to communicate these values about affordable health care, about making sure people have a good job, about protecting people's liberty and rights, being able to communicate those in a way without changing our values to moderate and Republican voters. That the people who are good at that, and I think Senator Gallego is very good at that, they find success in Arizona. And so that's the key.
Well, this is the dichotomy. While the Democrat Party nationally is embroiled in a lot of introspection and trouble, here in Arizona, almost all of the top state positions, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, the 2 U.S. senators, all Democrats.
Yeah.
What is Arizona doing that maybe the rest of the party is not in other states or nationally?
I mean, I think that there's 2 things at play at once. I think one is all of those statewide elected officials that you've referenced, they're all hard fighters. They are people who have gone out there, they aggressively campaigned in order to get their office, and in most cases won by even small margins, right? It wasn't super tight. And so I think that's part of it. They also are communicating with a broad group of voters. They're not thinking that, oh, we need to pick off this demographic and that demographic. The idea in Arizona is we need to appeal to a majority of voters so that we can win. And then on the other hand, I think that in Arizona, the Republican Party has been continually putting up candidates that are far outside of the mainstream of what even most Republican voters want. And so voters have been faced with a choice where they're like, am I going to elect some of these extreme Republicans who I don't particularly like, or am I going to go vote for a Democrat when I haven't voted for a Democrat before? And the key is making the case to those people without losing your base. And I think that Democrats in Arizona have managed to do that. But the math is going to be tough for us in Arizona. And that's why it requires us to sort of, it's like kind of an all hands on deck strategy.
Tony, this is one of the interesting things that I've seen over time. And Rai Teixeira was talking about this during the Obama years. He said the Democrats, or the demographics of this country, are shifting with more Latinos, Hispanic voters coming on board, that the demographics are going to favor the Democrat Party from here on out, and the Republicans are going to be lost. This is flipped because Hispanic voters are starting to gravitate toward the Republican Party. How troubling is that to you as a Democratic strategist?
I think the idea that demographics are destiny, which is the way that people would put that, is silly.
I agree with you, by the way.
It doesn't make sense. And I think that, and this is a thing that Democrats in Arizona do too, is that we know that Latino voters are a persuasion audience, meaning they're a group of people who you have to convince to vote for you. They're not a group that you can take for granted. And what happened in the last election is that there are a number of voters in those demographics. I mean, Democrats still did well, but that were shifting over to Trump specifically. And I think that what's been happening here is that as these voters have seen what's been going on in Washington, D.C., some of the chaos, some of the cuts to essential programs, or at least the proposed cuts, that those numbers are starting to shift.
Tony, is there a generational battle within the Democrat Party right now? You see AOC out on the stump with Bernie Sanders. You couldn't have a more, in terms of just age.
Yeah.
The message may be the same, but I mean, this is a generational shift, and you've lost in Congress, I believe, 5 congressmen this year who could have maybe helped you out on the margins on some of these votes. Raul Grijalva being one of them. Everybody over 65 at least. What's the strategy to get new blood in this party?
I mean, we do have a lot of good young candidates, and this is a thing that people are talking about. And there's a big hubbub going on right now about one of the members of the DNC as an organization that is specifically going to be challenging Democrats that are
David Hogg, right?
Yeah, David Hogg. And so whether that's right or wrong, I think the point is that there is a ton of energy right now. And one of the things that we've seen in the past several months is that the Democrats who, regardless of age, who aren't aggressively fighting back, who aren't aggressively communicating, who are being too cautious when it comes to a message, and I don't mean ideologically, I mean that they're just worried to offend people instead of just sort of giving it to voters straight. I think that Democrats have been very frustrated with voters, or with elected officials who don't fit into that mold.
Yeah.
And starting to be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more aggressive. And so I don't think necessarily I think it doesn't break down by age as cleanly as you might think.
Okay.
I think it comes down mainly to sort of confrontation.
There's been an interest in the David Schwiker seat forever, out in the East Valley and parts of Phoenix. You had a really good candidate, I thought, with Amish Shah. He got within 2 points or so, but he didn't win. There seems to be an obsession with beating David Schwiker. I know he's on the endangered list. It's a competitive district now because of redrawing lines. But is that fool's gold, or do you think that's still?
I think it's a possible win. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to take voters crossing over. It's going to take increased Democratic turnout. And I think the reason why voters focus, or why Democratic strategists focus so much on that district, is because Schwiker does have a history of ethical lapses where he's been, cited by, Congress for, mistakes that he's made.
But the voters keep saying, I don't care.
Right. And so I think the point is that finding a way to communicate not just those problems, but the alternative vision that Democrats have. And, in a really rough year, Shaw got very close. And so I think that in this upcoming election, where midterms, I think, are going to do better for Democrats, this is another switch that wasn't the way that it was before. I think that, I'm sure he and his people are taking it very seriously. I do think that a Democrat can emerge who can beat him. But if we win, it's going to be very close.
Tony Cani, really appreciate it. We'll have you back in the program. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you got it. Tony Cani with Radar Strategies, Democratic strategist. We're back in a moment on Newsmaker. Thanks as always for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will see you next week on Newsmaker.